Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Homestand Show. It's Albert Vartanian, and in for James Sharman today is Justin Pooni.
What's up, Albert?
How you doing, sir? You excited for the show today?
I'm excited. A lot of good topics, good guests.
Yes.
I'm excited.
And some good debate. We're going to talk about some of the dirtiest players in the NHL, which was put together by one of our producers, Producer Stevie Z, which you will get to know on this show.
And I got a big problem with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we get into that, on the show today, we have Michael Singh. He's going to drop by to talk about Toronto FC's opener this Saturday, home opener against the Columbus Crew. Stevie Psihogios drops in too from NorthStar Bets. We're going to talk some NHL. He's going to give us some picks, and he's going to talk about why he thinks Daniel Jones is the perfectly average quarterback. Also on the show, Noor Zainab to talk about the Raptors, and Fred VanVleet was on fire.
Ooh,
he cut a promo on the NBA officials last night.
I wonder if he's going to pay his fine in straight cash, homie, to quote Randy Moss.
Dude, he said, I love how he's like, whatever, I'll pay the fine. Boom, and just drop knowledge.
When you make 20 plus million, you know.
Yeah. We'll get into that. We'll show you that clip later on the show. Let's start with some news, some unfortunate news, man. Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes this guy can't catch a break. I know he's criticized a lot for what he does, but he's injured once again. This time it was in pregame for the Thunder game last night. He's going up for a layup, as you can see here, and his left ankle just buckles, and he stands on top of that ankle. So he missed that game, and there's a report that he might miss the rest of the season.
Yeah, they said that he's in a boot and stuff like that, and he's about 4 to 6 weeks potentially. After that game on Sunday against Dallas, where that team looked so good, he looked so fresh, so like the best player on planet Earth, right? Kevin Durant. And to see this, it's like, wow. And this stretch run was crucial for Phoenix, not only for playoff seeding, but to get chemistry with the rest of the players on the Phoenix Suns. Now you're going to expect Kevin Durant to roll in, coming off a hobbled ankle in the playoffs, or potentially to play in elimination situations. It's bad for Phoenix. Again, they weren't world beaters before him. Then when he came in, you thought, now they're the clear-cut favorite. But them, along with Memphis, I don't know, now with John Morant, it's very interesting what's going to happen in the Western Conference, and it sucks for Kevin Durant because he missed time in Brooklyn. We know about everything else that went wrong in Brooklyn, but now to have him hurt on such a freak thing in the pre-game layup lines, how many times have you ever seen that before?
I know. Someone's going to get in trouble for not cleaning that floor. I mean, the fact that the guy slipped, I mean, it's probably not their fault, just a complete freak accident. He came out after, and he was still taking shots. Yeah. But then, obviously, I mean, I don't know if you've ever rolled your ankle pretty badly. The pain is immediate. It goes away for a bit. Adrenaline takes over. And then the next day.
It's the next day when you wake up in the morning and it's like the size of a balloon,
but
right?
Back to the Suns. I mean, they have a lot to make up for Kevin Durant not being there. I mean, D-Book went off last night, and he put on a bit of a show in Durant's absence. They still got DeAndre Ayton, who I thought's been sneaky pretty good with Durant in the lineup. Yeah. And in terms of chemistry, I mean, based on what we've seen so far with him, I don't think that's really an issue.
No, see, this team is a veteran team. They've been to the finals before, right? Monty Williams is one of the best coaches in the NBA. Yeah. He's going to know how to roll with the punches. It just sucks because from what we saw, the small glimpse we saw of Kevin Durant with the Phoenix Suns, man, it looked really good. And you were excited to watch it for going forward into the playoffs and not have it taken away as a basketball fan. It sucks because let's be real. Watching Kevin Durant play, he makes the game so effortless. He plays in such a beautiful way. He plays basketball in a beautiful way.
Yeah,
it's
artistry for the NBA, right? And I mean, this really kills the Suns' chances of winning a championship if they even get that far. Hopefully, he's back for the playoffs. Yeah, it clicks and the Suns are ready to go. All right, let's talk about Tony DeAngelo. And yes, I know he's not probably at the top of anyone's newswire, but he was has been suspended for a couple of games by the NHL for spearing Corey Perry. He got him pretty good, right in the pills almost, just right in the pads.
Right in the
it was pretty dirty. Area. So this teed up our producer Stevie Z to put together his list of the top 5, I believe, dirtiest players in the NHL currently at the moment. So this is who he's got. At number 1, Tom Wilson. I don't think you can really argue that one. Ryan Reeves, Brady Tkachuk, Brad Marchand, and Jacob Trouba. You have some beef.
Stevie Z, look, Stevie Z's my guy. I love him.
What don't you like about it?
But this is clearly crazy. How is Brad Marchand not top 2, right?
Yeah, the slew.
Why is Ryan Reeves even on the list? Ryan Reeves is an enforcer.
I mean, he did pull someone's hair out one time. Was it Ryan Graves?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a while ago. But Brady Tkachuk, like, that's just a pure Maple Leafs bias right there by our boy Stevie Z.
Hold on. The producer, Sean, the dirtiest player in the game, wants to join us and weigh in. Let's hear it, Sean.
Hey, gentlemen.
What's up, buddy?
Great start to the show.
All right.
Yeah, firstly, why isn't Ric Flair on this list? Secondly, like, I agree with Justin. I think Ryan Reeves is an enforcer. He does his job. I mean, a lot of these guys are pests. To be honest, I mean, Tony DeAngelo is one of the worst guys in the
You
league.
should be on here, Tony DeAngelo.
You know, for his comments, and B, just like the kind of person he is.
Yeah.
Well, he did. I think he assaulted a referee in like 2017.
Yeah, and like he was like out of the league for a little bit because of his comments that aren't to do with hockey. But
you remember when he scrapped Reese Johnson for Chicago? He hit him with a Ric Flair low blow in the fight. I mean, that's got to that alone takes.
Tony DeAngelo's the biggest scumbag in the NHL, right?
Yeah, I agree with you guys there. And to be honest, Corey Perry could even be on this list.
Perry could be on,
which is again
Perry
could also be a bit of Leaf bias there, Justin. But I think he deserves to be.
No,
on the
he's
list.
pretty dirty. Kadri,
yeah,
on the line.
I think after he's distanced himself. Actually, the Bennington incident wasn't that too long ago, too.
No, I'm just going to like some random list here of the dirtiest players off the top of my head. Corey Perry's on this list. Antoine Roussel.
He's even playing the league anymore.
Yeah, I think so.
He used to be.
All time dirtiest player off the top of your head. Scott Stevens.
Wow.
What about like
Darius Kasparaitis?
Darius Kasparaitis. He was pretty dirty. Marty McSorley. Well, I mean, he was dirty for a different way. He was protecting the best player in the world.
Marchment used to throw a lot of knee on knees back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your game like back in the day? I know you played some puck.
I was like Alex Burrows, my Canucks. It's an absolute
pest.
Here we go.
Every time
score some big time goals. Score some big time goals.
Alex
get under
Burrows.
the skins.
How many cups do they have? Sorry, I don't even know why I
that's
said
at least
that.
one a cup.
I know. I don't even know why I said it. Why did I say it? All right. That's it for the dirtiest players. Coming up next, Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. He joined us to talk some NHL. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Justin Pooni filling in for James Sharman, Albert Vartanian here. And now we're joined by Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. The last time he was on the show, he went 2-1 with his picks. So we won some money. At least I won some money because I tailed it. Usually I don't tail guests, but Stevie Psihogios of NorthStar Bets.
There's one guy you want to tail. It's Stevie from
Stevie, how are you, buddy?
Hey, good. How you guys doing?
Doing well, man. Let's talk about Auston Matthews. You just wrote a piece that's up on northstarbets.ca questioning whether or not he's starting to heat up. What do you think?
I think he is. If you look at the last 3 games, he's got 4+ shots on goal in each of those games, which is, it doesn't sound like a lot for Matthews, but it is. It's the first time since December that he's managed to string 3 games in a row with 4+ shots on goal. And that's just something we've seen Matthews be a little bit more selective with his shot choice this year. And that factor with the combination of his shooting percentage dropping from the really high, like 17.2% that he was firing off last year, is kind of why we're not seeing him score at the rate he was. But I'm encouraged by the amount that he's shooting as of late. And that goal against the Devils, I think, what better opportunity, what better way to springboard a hot streak down the stretch than with a beautiful game winner like that.
But Stevie, it is a bit concerning. He has 4 goals, just 4 goals in his last 10 games. I mean, for a guy of Auston Matthews' caliber, it's just not good enough, right? And the big talking point around the Toronto Maple Leafs right now is Auston Matthews going to be at his best come playoffs? Because, you know, out of everything that the Leafs have done, if he's not at his best, this team's not going to click. It doesn't matter who you brought in.
Yeah, it's true. But I think what we're seeing is just some natural regression from Matthews. He shot at like over 17% last year, shooting percentage wise. His career mark is 15%. He's shooting closer to 12 this year. So you do the math, it kind of averages out to what his career mark is. And we see it all the time with players after a big season. It's not that shocking to see them maybe scale it back a little bit. But the one thing that is concerning is the shot volume as far as the goal scoring standpoint. And if you're looking to bet Matthews to score a goal, that's what's been worrisome from that standpoint. But now that we're starting to see him shoot the puck a little bit more, I'm a little bit more encouraged about his recent results than I have been based on what we've seen basically since, December was the last time he had those 3 games in a row with 4+ shots. So if you can start stacking these high shot volume games together, I think you can see him start to turn it around.
The goals haven't been there for Matthews this year, but he's still on pace to get around 40, which for any other player other than named Auston Matthews is considered a very good year.
That's a great
bad season, right? But Matthews has been picking it up on the defensive side of the game his game. He's leading the league in block shots for forwards, and he's on pace to get 45 assists this year as well. Talk about his defensive abilities this year and just his all-around playmaking as well, and what you've seen from Auston Matthews minus the goal scoring this year.
Well, the Maple Leafs, what is their biggest knock? They can't win in the playoffs. And how do you win in the playoffs? You play a full 200-foot game. You surrender defensively, maybe a little bit more. You throw your body up there a little bit more than Matthews has in the past, and he is doing that. He's blocking a lot more shots, as you mentioned, Justin. He's maybe sacrificing some of that offense for defense, and it's paying off as far as the wins go. The Maple Leafs, if they were in any other division, they're right there competing for first place. They're in the Atlantic. They're in there with the Boston Bruins. It stinks, but they're having a really good year, and he's making an impact at both ends of the ice. And they know that's what's needed in the playoffs. They saw what Tampa Bay did last year in a 7-game series. They've seen what the Bruins have done in past years. Those are teams, you got players like Bergeron, Braden Point. Those guys sell out defensively to win hockey games. And I think that's rubbing off on the Maple Leafs. They've had a front row seat to those two franchises for the last 4 or 5 seasons in the playoffs. So they're, I think, starting to figure out, okay, maybe we can't score 50, 60 goals. Maybe in order to win hockey games, you got to scale back some of the offense and play a little bit more defensively.
Definitely. Another team trying to make it into the playoffs, the Ottawa Senators, dealt some bad news. Cam Talbot, he's going to be out, projected to miss about 11 games, 3 weeks with lower body injury. He's already missed 18 games this season, but this comes at such a bad time for the Sens, who are hot. I mean, 6-3-1 in their last 10, just 5 points out of the second wild card spot behind Pittsburgh. Right now, this obviously comes at the wrong time. Do you limit the Sens' chances of making the playoffs now that he's out for a little bit?
It hurts. It definitely hurts, but it's not like Talbot was having a crazy season in the first place. His save percentage was right around .905, and that's the Sens have a few goalies that have been kind of giving them that type of goaltending. He is a streaky goaltender. There are games where Cam Talbot will steal you a point. Remember, they played the Bruins earlier this year, and he stood on his head. I believe he set his career best for saves in a game. But there's also times where Talbot will let in a leaky goal that you'll scratch your head and wonder, how did that get past him? So, to me, it stinks, but it's not like he was providing the Sens with top-tier goaltending. He's a veteran presence, which I'm sure on a young team means a lot. But that being said, they've got a young goaltender in Matt Sogard, who I think is looking pretty solid in the NHL. I know they got roughed up the other night against Chicago. It was probably going to be a bit of a stretch for the Sens to make the playoffs anyways. But for them as a team, it's good that they're in this playoff hunt and they can realize what it takes to maybe get there. And Pierre Dorian rewarded them by adding Chychrun. So I think this is just a good learning experience from Ottawa. I think you'll see them inch a little bit closer and into the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I put some money on the Sens last week after the Chychrun trade to make the playoffs.
So did I. 6-1.
Stevie, was that a smart move by me, or was that just a bad move now, looking back at it?
That's good value. You look, they're right in the race, and they've been one of the best teams in the league outside of that drubbing against the Blackhawks. They've been really solid, Ottawa. So I think that's good value. I think at 6-1, they've got as good a shot as any team looking into the playoffs does in the Eastern Conference. Washington's starting to fade. Florida, it's like, when are they ever going to get it going? We've been waiting all year for that team to show us something, and they haven't. So I think Ottawa's put themselves right in the mix. Buffalo, those are the two teams that I think if one team is going to jump into the playoff picture, it's going to be one of those two who are currently sitting just outside of it.
Stevie, 11 games on the card tonight. The Sens take on the Kraken. They're on the ice. What do you like tonight? The last time we were on here, like we mentioned, you went 2-1. So we're looking for some winners once again.
I like the Devils 60-minute money line. I know they burnt me the last time I was on here. I'm back on New Jersey. That's at plus 106 over on NorthStar Bets. I also like the over in the Tampa Bay Vegas game. Last time I checked, the total was still at 6. And at minus 115, you could have the over. There's not going to be any Aiden Hill in that tonight. Jonathan Quick is going to start for the Golden Knights now that they're down 3 goalies. Brossoit, Thompson, and Hill all dealing with injuries. Quick has not been good this year. So I like the over on that to hit. The Bolts have been playing a lot of open ice hockey. They'll give up some goals. They'll score some goals. And then for my third bet, I like the under 6 between the Penguins and the Islanders. The Islanders are locking it down defensively right now, and Sorokin's money in net. That's a big game too. That's a big 2 points between two teams who are in the wild card right now in the East. So I expect that to be a tight checking game.
Love that. Stevie, we have 2 minutes left, but I want to get your take on this. Sean, if you can pull up this tweet that I found on Twitter by one Stevie Sahoyas. He said on Daniel Jones, the Giants just locked themselves into being mid. Please explain yourself here, my friend.
And explain mid for Albert, too, because he's kind of in the older generation as well.
So I think Daniel Jones is the perfect average quarterback. And in the NFC right now, an average quarterback can get you in the playoffs because there's a lot of bad quarterbacks. But Daniel Jones isn't going to get you to the Super Bowl. I was very impressed by what Daniel Jones did last year. Nobody expected him to make that big of a leap. But what was the biggest reason everyone said he made that leap? The biggest reason everyone was pointing to was Brian Daboll. So if we're going to give Brian Daboll Coach of the Year because he was able to work miracles on a quarterback, that should tell you something about the quarterback. If we're giving Daboll all this credit for working miracles on Daniel Jones, what does that say about Daniel Jones? It says he needs a miracle worker to be an average quarterback in the NFL. So to me, to give that guy that type of contract, you're not going to go anywhere, especially when you have all these quarterbacks. Like, quarterback movement is up now in the NFL more than ever. You got Lamar Jackson sitting there waiting for someone to throw him an offer, and you're there just locking yourself into Daniel Jones. It doesn't make any sense to me.
You know what? If I need to be a perfectly average person to make 150 mil, sign me up. Quickly, 30 seconds, one word. Lamar Jackson will be a blank next season.
Well, he'll be a Raven. He'll be a Raven. That's he's not going anywhere, unfortunately. It doesn't sound like it.
Smart money on that.
All right, there you go. That's
he'll be
been Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. Thank you so much. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, likewise. I enjoyed it. Take care, guys.
Thank you. All right, coming up next, Mikey Singh. We're talking Toronto FC's home opener this Saturday. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Albert Vartanian, Justin Pooni, and joining us now, host of Room 442, Mikey Singh.
Did you miss me?
How
happy to see me?
I'm happy to see you, man.
There we go.
Justin, are you happy to see Mikey?
This is actually the first time me and Mikey have ever shared the camera together.
Milestone
Moment.
Milestone
It's a monumental moment.
As big of
It
a
really
moment
is.
as when the Vancouver Whitecaps beat Toronto FC last year
Almost as big.
in the Canadian
Wow.
Championships.
Well, that's really well done considering this is take two because with some issues. Technically, thanks to producer Sean. I love you. Let's talk about Toronto FC. Home opener this weekend. You were just at TFC training. Do you have an update on Lorenzo Insigne?
Yeah, so third straight day that Lorenzo Insigne is going to be practicing, it's funny because I've been getting text messages all week from people who want to come see this Toronto FC team on Saturday. And they're like, is Lorenzo Insigne going to play? Is he going to be there? How long is he going to play for? Like, this is obviously the guy that people are coming to see still, even though you can make the argument that between Insigne and Bernardeschi's been the better player, but Insigne still has that pull very much so with Toronto FC fans. So the good news is it seems like he is on track to play some minutes there on Saturday.
I found it kind of concerning that not many updates were coming out of the TFC camp about Lorenzo Insigne. So I immediately thought maybe it's more serious than they initially thought. Was that the case?
So yeah, I think that's what I felt as well, right? When you hear silence on your star player, it's concerning. Bob Bradley came out and said he doesn't know why people are so concerned. He says that's pretty much standard across the business where they don't give too much information when it comes to injuries. But, when it's your star player, it's a little bit different. Like, if the Leafs, Auston Matthews goes down, you're getting that update the same night, same game, potentially.
Well,
Ryan
Ryan O'Reilly, I was down
yeah.
and right away you knew exactly what happened to the guy.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that there's frustration there in that sense in terms of, like, not getting an immediate update. But the good news is that it clearly wasn't as serious as it maybe had initially seemed. Muscle injuries are also always tricky. So maybe you got to be cautious with that. But like I said, good news that he is back.
A couple more muscle injuries, Adama Diomande and Akinola, both pulled hamstrings. With these muscle injuries, what do you chalk that up to?
It's a really, really good question. And it's been like an occurring theme with Toronto FC for a couple years. I don't know if it's just Toronto FC it's isolated to, but there's definitely become a narrative there with the team that for whatever reason, muscle injuries continuously occur. I personally think that it's standard across MLS that this happens to other teams as well. But it could just be, Diomande in particular, he arrived late in preseason. He's being pushed along here to hopefully get fit and become that starting striker and eat up minutes. Maybe he wasn't quite ready to play in the cold in Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, on turf as well. That also factors in. There's a lot of different things that you could chalk up the particular injury to. I don't get too carried away with that narrative. I don't like pointing the finger because, quite frankly, I don't have the information that all these sports science doctors and everything do have. I'm not in a position to question whether or not they made the right decision. But I understand that why there's a narrative going around, and I quite frankly, when I see an injury, I just chalk it up to bad luck.
Now, Mikey, 0-1 and 1 start for TFC. Sum up the first 2 games. What did you see? What did you like? What did you dislike? Tell me what you think.
To be honest, it feels like TFC is still in preseason, man.
Feels a lot like last season a little bit.
The vibes were definitely similar. I think especially that first game against DC United when they went ahead 2-1. They lost Lorenzo Insigne injury and then blew the lead. That was like last season never ended, right? It was just like a carryover from last season. But to sum up the first 2 games, like surviving, I think is the best way. It's 2 tough games on the road. It's never easy in Major League Soccer to play on the road. I was talking to Matt Hedges today, a veteran in Major League Soccer who's played in the league for 12, 13, 14 years. And I asked him, like, why is it so tough to play on the road? Like, why? Because if you look at the results, it's consistent across the board. Teams struggle to pick up points on the road for whatever reason. And to be frank, he didn't really have an answer. And it's not Matt Hedges is the only one who's giving me that. Other players have given me that exact same reason. Like, they don't know why it's so difficult to go play on the road. So they managed to get a point at Atlanta, which is a tough place to play. And now they're returning home for their home opener, which hopefully they get that home field advantage.
It'll be a cold one, too. So they should get some
Cold one.
Well, Columbus is a cold city, too. So it might even out. But they've been practicing inside on turf. Is there you've also, you've experienced playing soccer too. Is there a difference between practicing on turf and then hopping on grass where it's going to be cold? Like, what's the climate issues or the weather issues that'll be at stake?
No, that's a really good question. There is a difference, right? Once you get warmed up, I think it doesn't really matter where you're playing. But that first start of the game, the first couple minutes of the game, where you're playing in the cold, your muscles feel a little bit tighter. They're gonna have to do a good job warming up. And I find it really interesting that TFC, their players are not going to be stepping foot at BMO Field, the actual pitch, until the day of the game. Right. It'll be the first time they step foot there, which obviously, at home opener, I think that could factor in because Columbus, as the visiting team, they're not going to be familiar or as familiar with BMO Field either. So I'm not sure how much of a home field advantage you have from a field perspective, your familiarity and everything like that. Hopefully the crowd can get behind them and gives them an extra juice. But yeah, I think there is a difference. And they'll probably have to modify the way they train just to accommodate for sort of what that difference is.
I think you'll agree with me, being good at home is really important if you want to be a good team in MLS. I mean, if you look at their home record last year, 7-3-7, just 24 points, obviously not good enough. When they won the championship in 2017, it was much better, top of the league. And if you look at the 2 teams with the best home records last season were the 2 teams that were in the final, right? So how important is BMO Field going to be to this team for this season?
It's crucial. It's everything, as we just talked about, like you said. Picking up points on the road is so difficult. And when you look at the best teams traditionally, they turn their home pitches into a fortress. And I know that's a cliche to say, but you have to, right? I think TFC are going to make a really strong point of that this year. You mentioned 7-3-7 at home. You say just that. TFC last year, if you look at their road record, it's way worse. And they were honestly chasing history with how bad they've been on the road. They did, I think, break that streak a little bit last year, but still they've been terrible on the road. So it's going to be really important for them if they want to make a push this year to pick up every point they can at home.
So last night I played in my beer league team. I was horrible. I gave away the ball, gave away a goal.
Typical.
Yeah, we lost 5-4. But I do most of my prep with some of the guys on my team. And they're like, "Are you going to talk about TFC tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mikey Singh's going to be on the show." And unanimous, they were all upset and against Michael Bradley playing in the midfield for Toronto FC. They all feel like maybe he's not up to snuff. He's not as fast as he once was. Just basically saying they don't think that he's good enough to be in the starting 11. Your thoughts?
I don't agree with that, but I understand why they're saying that. That's when you turn on a TFC game and you're looking at what's going wrong. Michael Bradley at times is at the focal point of that. It's not because it's necessarily his fault, but he plays such an important position on the pitch that when mistakes happen, he's often the one that's in the position to try and rectify those mistakes. He has lost pace, no doubt about it. When you're a footballer and you're not as fast, you stand out like a sore thumb. And I think that's what happens a lot with Michael Bradley. And TFC are a team that have been burned in transition so many different times. It's not necessarily Michael Bradley's fault, but he's the guy that sticks out like a sore thumb in that regard. I think he's actually been really good the start of the season. There were maybe an instance or 2 against DC United where he could have done better. But if you look at the numbers, you look at the stats, look at him on the ball, he's still a really good player. He played all of 10 minutes last season, was on the pitch nonstop. He's 36 years old now, and he's a machine out there. And he led the league in line breaking passes. So that's something you when he's on the ball, like Michael Bradley can help get the best out of guys like Insigne and Bernadeschi. So I think you, as a coach, you have to acknowledge that Michael Bradley is going to be a little bit slower, and you have to kind of insulate him a little bit, but that doesn't mean he can't be an effective player. I think TFC as a club need to do a better job of getting the best out of Michael Bradley.
Right.
Mikey, I want to talk quickly about the Apple TV because that's a big new thing in the MLS. What have you seen? Have you got a chance to watch any games on Apple TV? What do you think with the coverage, the look, the feel? And is it something that really can help bolster the MLS in the United States and in Canada too?
Yeah, no, it's a monumental deal, right? And it's a 10-year deal that could bring in $250 million a season for Major League Soccer. And I think that's the biggest point about this deal. It's an influx of cash that they would not have gotten elsewhere. Now, when you look at the production so far, it's the first year. There's going to be growing pains. They've done a decent job. And I like the fact that I think for a Canadian MLS fan, you almost don't really pay attention to the rest of Major League Soccer. This Apple TV deal gets fans caught up to speed a little bit because they do a really good job at stringing in other matches and bringing in other matches, other tidbits that could just make the Toronto-based viewer more educated because of it. So I think that part of it is really cool. I do think that the commentators, they don't know TFC as well as the TSN crew does.
Right.
And I think that is very obvious, and I think fans are obviously frustrated at that part. I think that's the biggest difference right now is that the level of knowledge isn't quite there, at least what we're accustomed to. So, it's good. I think it's going to be a positive deal for the league, and I think you're going to see a lot of benefits because of it, that not just from a viewer perspective, I think from the league perspective.
Last question. My Whitecaps had a big 5-0 victory in the round of 16 in the CONCACAF Champions League. I know you said TFC is the best team in Canada.
Yeah.
Can my Whitecaps prove you wrong this year? Is there any chance?
I mean, the Whitecaps are 0-2 in the league so far. They beat a mid-table Honduran side 5-0 that they should have absolutely walked over. Listen, I don't think any of the Canadian teams are a force in Major League Soccer right now. I think TFC have the highest potential just based on the players on their roster. But I think it's going to be a tough year for Canada's soccer teams. Montreal is 0-2 as well. They lost Wilfred Nancy, their head coach. It's tough.
Okay, quickly, we have we have 30 seconds left.
Cool.
Toronto FC plus money at home. Do you like them against the Columbus Crew on Saturday? The draw's playing plus 250 as well, by the way.
It's so tough to say. I can't make a prediction because I honestly don't know what this team is yet. What they show me in the first two games, there's reason for concern.
I'm taking the plus money with TFC. I love Bernadeschi. Score another one for us. All right, Mikey Singh, thanks so much for doing this. He'll be on the show every time Toronto FC is on the schedule. Coming up in the next block, Noor Zainab joins us to talk some Raptors and Fred VanVleet. He was on fire last night. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Thanks to Mikey Singh for coming on. It's Albert Vartanian, Justin Pooni, and we're now joined by the host of Hoop Talks, Noor Zainab.
Thanks for having me, guys.
How you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
All
How
right.
you feeling?
Feeling good. We got to talk about the Toronto Raptors.
Yes.
Fred VanVleet was feeling some type of way last night after the Clippers won 108-100 against the Toronto Raptors. Fred wasn't happy with an NBA official, one Ben Taylor, and he cut a promo on him post-game. Here's what he had to say.
I mean, I don't mind. I'll take a fine. I don't really care. I thought, Ben Taylor was terrible tonight. I thought that on most nights, a couple of out of the three, there's one or two that just the game up, and it's been like that a couple games in a row. Denver was tough, obviously. You come out tonight, you're competing pretty hard. The third quarter, I get a bullshit tech, changes the whole dynamic of the game, changes the whole flow of the game.
This season, Ben Taylor has officiated in 6 games that Fred VanVleet has played. VanVleet has received a tech in 4 of those games. I'm not saying Ben Taylor has something against Fred VanVleet, but the numbers kind of lean that way. Before we go into what you thought about Ben Taylor's performance and Fred VanVleet's performance, do you think Fred went over the line here?
No, not at all. I think this was a long time coming, if anything. If you saw Fred against the Nuggets, he came out afterwards and he said that I'm going to bite my tongue tonight. I'm not going to say anything. And then obviously last night he was given another reason to go off, and he did. And when you look at how these fouls and these ejections happen, they're not happening because the players are calling them out or they're yelling at them, profanities being thrown around. They're just showing frustration to their teammates about the foul that was called that they think isn't warranted. So now they're not allowed to even complain. That's a human emotion. You should be able to do that on the court. And I think the referees are taking away from what we as fans like to see on the court, which is players looking like humans.
And I mean, the last game you're mentioning, it's the Denver Nuggets. It was Scott Foster who ejected Scotty Barnes, a controversial call. You know, you can melt read as much as you want. It looked like Scotty said, y'all cheating, bro. Which, I mean, you could take that for what it is. Scott Foster is known to make some
he's a sensitive individual.
To make some questionable calls. But in terms of referees, in any sport, I mean, I've been a fan of wanting them to jump on the podium post-game and explain some of their calls. I mean, they have the pool report in the NBA where they write down a couple of lines. But do you think refs should be accountable for the decisions that they make?
I think putting them on a podium and gives them more time that they don't need to be on. Like, we don't.
But they can be questioned, right?
They can be questioned for sure.
If the media asks the right questions, they have to answer those questions.
We talked about this yesterday on Hoop Talks. Refs, the fact that we know NBA refs on a first name basis type of thing, the fact that I know who Scott Foster is and that he screws over Chris Paul, that's not a good thing in the league to have a ref and that has apparently a hidden agenda. Or now this stuff about Ben Taylor and Fred VanVleet. That's just giving refs more ability to take the shine away from the game. And the second part, Fred VanVleet mentioned in his clip that that's not why people come to watch the game, like Noor just mentioned as well. This giving refs more power and stuff like that. I don't want to know who the refs are. I don't want to see them. I just want them to call the game, and that's it. And the fact that this stuff keeps on happening, especially in the NBA, I think it needs to change.
But you're going to know who the refs are because they influence the game heavily. They're out there calling the fouls. There's that human element that you can't get rid of. And they're going to make mistakes. It's just maybe there is certain referees who have a long-term memory in terms of how players have treated them over time, right? And this is what we see from Ben Taylor, I think, with Fred VanVleet.
I think so too, but I think if you look at in terms of Fred VanVleet, you're looking at someone who's going on the court trying to make his best play. But if you're heading on there and looking at the officials' report to see who's going to be reffing the game, and you're like, oh, I know this guy, and we don't have a good history. Now, as a player, that's going to get to you psychologically, because on the court, you're not going to be as aggressive getting calls or making those extra plays that might be putting your body on the line, because you might be thinking, maybe he's waiting for me to do this to call me a shot on this. So just in terms of, I think, the psychological aspect of the players, that's a massive thing, because they should be going in there thinking, I'm here with the most neutral person who's going to call the game as fair as possible. But now they have to think, what if actually they're biased towards me?
Right.
And that's a problem.
Is there a concern that this could come back to bite the Raptors in the ass?
I was just going to point that question. Now that they've talked about the last couple of games, don't you think refs now are going to want to have an extra eye on the Raptors? They're going to be like, I don't really want...
I don't know, because I think if you think about it this way, when people, this is going to be really dark, but let's say you get threatened, right? You get threatened by someone on the street, something happens and someone's coming at you and they're making threats to you. Your main objective at that point is to go public with it so people understand that if anything happens, it's because you called it out earlier. So I think now if the Raptors call it out, they've already called it out, and something continues to happen, you can now make a really great case that this is happening because the Raptors called them out, not because the refs are actually doing their job.
Yeah, and listen, the Raps didn't lose that game last night because of the officiating. The Raps lost that game because the Raps weren't good enough, and Kawhi Leonard played some fantastic basketball. We'll talk about him. Fred VanVleet is probably expected to get a fine. So I was trying to go through fines for criticizing the referees, and the last one that happened was in the playoffs. It was Suns coach Monty Williams. He criticized the ref, not even close to what Fred VanVleet said, by the way. He got fined $15K. Same thing happened to Cavs coach JB Bickerstaff, criticized the ref, $15K. I don't know if we want to go through how much we think he'll get fined, but you have to assume dropping those F-bombs, the way that he did it, how matter of fact he was, which I absolutely love. He showed some real passion in that promo he cut on Ben Taylor.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a big fine. I wonder, I don't know this obviously, if the Raptors agree with him, the Raptors organization and the Raptors executive staff, would they take on that hit of a fine?
I think he's capable of taking care of that on his own. He's
Oh, absolutely.
he's making enough money that I think he can. But I think at the same time, someone like a franchise, a coach, players probably look at Fred in that moment to be that leader, to go out there and be the voice, to be like, we're obviously, and he said this in the interview too. He said that they're not losing because of the referees, but the referees aren't helping the problem. Because if you have a referee trying to make himself the main character in that way, you're going to lose momentum. You will lose the experience of a fan experience will be gone as well. So all those things matter in terms of how the momentum's going, and those refs have a big part in that, I think.
Well, let's look at the game now. The third quarter, they struggled mightily in the third quarter, and that was the difference in the game. When I saw that team last night, and I saw Kawhi, PG, I just saw the talent disparity. You know how I feel about the Raptors, right? When you watched that game, what was your biggest takeaway that you saw from the Clippers and the Raptors? What did you see that the biggest difference was?
Obviously it's Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Like, it's very hard to come up against them, especially when your main guy, Pascal Siakam, isn't coming up the way he's supposed to be. And you have Fred VanVleet, who's pretty much carrying the team on his back at that point. The bench was not helpful. The bench, Gary Trent was 2 of 11 the entire night. You only had Chris Boucher come through. Precious was, I'm so sorry, awful, kind of. Like, he was not great
He has
whatsoever.
those games where he looks so good. Then
shows his
then he'll
age.
get on the court and look completely devoid of confidence.
Yeah. And it's this confidence that took that hit too. And I wonder what's happening there, because once he came back from injury, he looked very good for that piece of period. And we were wondering, like, oh, we won that trade with Kyle Lowry and Precious Achiuwa. And then it comes to a point where he's like borderline unplayable because he's just not making the right plays on the court. It's about his confidence and just knowing where the ball should be in terms of the ball IQ, and it's just not there some nights.
The Raptors 1-3 on the road trip so far. They got the Lakers on Friday night. I think I asked you the last time you were on if they were going to be above 500 after this road trip. That's not going to happen. I mean, it's a difficult road trip. You're playing very good teams and teams that have something to play for. The Clippers aren't just floating along in a safe playoff spot. They're battling. When's the last time you saw Kawhi Leonard play 40 minutes like that before?
When he's in Toronto.
Takes it personally
exactly.
against Toronto too. He's what, 6-0 now?
I think it's 6-0 and
6-0.
16-2 all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kawhi Leonard.
Look, and they're going against a Lakers team where Anthony Davis is playing really good basketball right now, and that's going to
With
be
a bit of a chip on his shoulder.
exactly.
too.
He got
Love that.
bumped in the nose,
I love that.
and he stayed in the game. He played kind of mean. Jakob Poeltl, of course, has been a defensive force. We talked about it before that. I was wrong on the Jakob Poeltl trade. I can admit I was wrong on that.
Wow.
You think that he can stop AD tomorrow?
I don't think it's going to be Jakob Poeltl problem alone. I think it's going to be a factor how the way we saw the Raptors take on the task that is Nikola Jokic will be how they take care of Anthony Davis as well. And if you look at Nick Nurse, he prides himself. I think he actually goes to sleep thinking about how do you stop the next team's best player. He doesn't even care if he wins the game. He just wants to stop the next team's best
And
player.
I think that answer in his head is probably OG.
OG, Pascal, Scotty, I think he will throw everybody at him. But the problem that I see with this Lakers team now is, yes, LeBron's out, and that's where you should win and capitalize. But because LeBron's out, they can use so many other guys in different ways that the Raptors might not be able to game plan. They brought in DeAngelo Russell over the trade deadline. He might actually be playing tomorrow night, so that's a scary sight.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they brought in Malik Beasley, who's he's a threat from the three-point line. So if you have Anthony Davis being covered, if he shoots it out to Malik Beasley, he might get that in. But the guy actually very much like Jared Vanderbilt. They brought him in as a defensive guy, as an energy. Boy, anybody wants to get in Raptors, let me know. Let's make the pull over here. He's the energy glue for this team. He helped them get the comeback against the Dallas Mavericks, down 30 points, held Luka Doncic to 1 field goal out of 5. So this is a guy that's going to be annoying against the Raptors.
You know what really concerns me with the Raptors? I mean, they've leaned on their defense for so long. That's what Nick Nurse prides himself on. But, I mean, they're still allowing teams to shoot just under 50%. Last night, the Clippers shot 54%. I mean, where is the issue in this defense? Because it's not OG. It's not Jakob.
It's a three-point line. Because the Raptors are not a good three-point shooting team. So if you're not shooting the 3 and you're not defending the 3 and you're going 2 for 3, you're shooting 2s, but the other team's shooting 3s. Simple math. The teams that shooting more 3s will get the win. They'll get the more points. So that's what's happening with this team. We're not shooting 3s or defending the 3.
Last night, though, it was the paint that killed the Raptors because the Clippers shot 30% from three-point range, but they dominated the paint last night. And you mentioned
Lubac.
Yeah,
Lubac was
and
so important.
You mentioned those guys on the Lakers that can hit threes. If they don't get out there and close them out, it could be a long night for the Raptors tomorrow night against the Lakers too.
Yeah, listen, the Clippers outscored the Raptors bench, and you mentioned only one double digits off the bench was Chris Boucher, who has these games where he looks really, really good. He never really has a bad game, Chris Boucher? Like a
'Cause
horrible game?
You know
He's
why?
pretty consistent.
I think it's because this is one I want to see the Raptors do. Chris Boucher moves. He actually runs around the court. A lot of the Raptors players, when you'll watch it when you're watching them on offense, they're on the perimeter waiting for the ball to get to them. That's not how you play a good basketball team. You have to go run and find the ball for yourself. And that's what Chris Boucher does. That's why he succeeds whenever he's on the court.
So the Raptors now down to 9th place, just a half game up on the Washington Wizards. How time and these losses start to add up. And we go from, yeah, they're going to make the play-in. They might even make the playoffs to maybe they're not going to make the play-in if they're playing this way, right?
Ah, yes. And you don't have a lot of room for mistakes anymore. And imagine one guy goes down and he's injured. This is gonna not look good for this team.
The depth is really an issue.
Absolutely. And what I wonder too is because a lot of these guys that are being bought in and clocked in right now, 3 of them will be up for a contract this offseason. So if the Raptors don't do anything with this team, what happens to these guys in the offseason? And Jakob Poeltl, Fred VanVleet, and Gary Trent Jr. So a lot is riding on whatever is left, but I'm not sure how confident we all feel all together.
Schedule 2, man. They got, after the Lakers, they got Denver, OKC who can put buckets in, Minnesota, Milwaukee, Indiana. Then you got Detroit, but then Washington, Miami, Philly. So it's going to be dicey, man.
5th hardest schedule remaining, so it's going to be tough.
They put themselves in this position. And, Masai didn't help that either by bringing in Poeltl and being a buyer at the deadline. And these are the games that you're going to have to win. And in a way, it's good because it really sets you up for the playoffs, for the type of competition you're going to have in the playoffs, right? If they even get to that point. It's just kind of frustrating, guys, because we all know we all know the Leafs are going to play the Lightning in the playoffs. We all know that the Raptors are going to get in, even if they get past the play-in. They're going to have to play a big dog. I'm just saying they're going to have to play a big dog, and we know what the result's going to be. Even if they somehow get past that first round, they're not good enough to make a deep run.
Nope. And that's the problem was this trade deadline, because they were like, even if you make it past the play-in, you're going to be a tough team for anyone to play you, that's for sure. But how are you going to get those wins against the juggernauts of the Eastern Conference? Yeah. That's going to be a problem.
And now you got 4 players on the team who are going to want to get paid.
Yep.
That's going to be a big problem for the Toronto Raptors. All right, that's enough Toronto Raptors talk. After the break, we're going to come back and we're going to finish off the show. I'm going to show you a parlay that almost hit. Kawhi Leonard disappointed this one fan. We'll be back after the break. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show, and we've reached the end of the show. Justin Pooni, Noor Zainab, sticking with us for the banter zone.
Scared.
Yes, I want to show you guys this same game parlay. This is a friend of mine who put this together, and we were sweating it near the end of the night. Check this out. He hit all of them except Kawhi, who finished with 24 points. This was a $50 parlay that paid $1,100.
That's the story of my life right there.
That's a heartbreaker right
That's
there.
the story of my life betting wise, man. I think everybody can relate to that.
That's a huge one.
Sucks, man.
I know.
There's no worse feeling actually in life than that.
I feel like exactly the parlays that you've lost on which days that were just like one parlay off. I can tell you right now. It was Al Horford cost me my parlay. He was the only one missing.
Everybody has that player, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Albert cost me my parlay the other day.
What?
Dortmund. Take Dortmund against Chelsea. Benfica had
Don't worry. You know what? I don't feel as bad because I bet it too.
Yeah.
I bet them draw no. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Noor, I want to get your take quickly on this whole Kevin Durant thing. The guy is so unlucky, and he has his critics, and I completely understand. And look, over his last 4 seasons, 158 games missed, which is incredible. And now he's going to miss even more time, potentially the rest of the season, after slipping, going for a layup in pregame, Noor.
I wonder who's more unlucky, Kevin Durant or the Phoenix Suns. It's Kevin Durant's had it really rough. If you look at his Brooklyn Nets tenure with Kyrie Irving there, Steve Nash, James Harden, Ben Simmons, the whole ordeal. And now the Phoenix Suns, they have been struggling the past couple of years in the Western Conference too, because trying to make it over the hump of the Western Conference Finals is not kind of getting there at all. And it's sad, and I don't even know how to put it into words anymore, because it's just like, what do you do about this?
Yeah.
Does he just have to stay healthy?
What are you smirking about? The guy.
I'm not smirking at him,
rude.
man. I'm just saying, what are you talking
Come
about?
on,
See
dude.
what you're trying to do? You're trying to make me look like the bad guy here.
Can we get Producer
What is
Sean
it?
on here? Sean, can you pop on quickly? We haven't had you on the show that much today.
What's happening?
Can we get Producer Sean's best bet, aka worst bet of the night?
Hey, I hit it last night.
Yeah, I got to give
we
you
hit
some
the
credit.
Wild.
He called
Yeah,
the
you
Wild
did.
on the
Yeah,
money
you
line.
did.
They won.
I'm looking at a couple of teams right now in the NHL. I like the Boston Bruins hosting the Edmonton Oilers, But I don't really like the line that much, so I might fade that one. Similar line, I'm going to take Colorado to beat the LA Kings, even probably at a .5.
Oh, .5
Or
plus
even in
146.
regulation, maybe.
So hold
We'll
on, the
see.
Bruins one you kind of threw me off because you're like, yeah, take it but fade it.
Fade it.
Which one are we doing?
No, we're not doing either. I just saying I like it, but I'm keeping it off the official play card.
Okay, the official worst pick of the night
It's
is
Colorado.
Colorado
In
plus
regulation.
In regulation.
In
Okay.
regulations.
You got the Raps tomorrow, Sean?
All right.
Never
Well, 5
mind.
seconds left,
That's
so that's
okay.
the end of the show. Thanks to all our guests, including Noor Zainab, for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow.